Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I'm keeping Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, which, depending on if you've watched my prior content on this game or not, is either a completely irrelevant, nonsensical way to start a video, or like, wait a second, what happened? So let's go ahead and give some context here, because I think some context is relevant, and timestamps down below to anyone who wants to jump to any particular section in case you, well, want to jump to a particular section. So, Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition is a game that it basically combines the core aspects of Terraforming Mars along with the phases of Race for the Galaxy to bring you, well, Ares Expedition. It brings you better artwork, faster gameplay, and the mechanisms of two different games together into one game, ideally delivering an experience that comes in at closer to the hour range, roughly half the time of a game of Terraforming Mars, perhaps even less depending on which expansions or modules you're playing with. My own personal experience with Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition is going to be, we played it a few times, and we thought, hey, this is nice, but it wasn't Terraforming Mars. Now, full transparency, myself and the people I played it with are all huge fans of Terraforming Mars. That is a relevant piece of information. Like, we love that game. To me, it's my favorite game of all time. Like, absolutely my favorite game of all time. And Ares Expedition delivered a lot of the general things I liked about Terraforming Mars, but cut out enough of the things that I liked that I thought it was a good game, but not one that I'd love to play. I put out a video together with Quackalope and Shira covering Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, Play This, Not That, Terraforming Mars versus Ares Expedition, and we all drastically chose Terraforming Mars as our preferred game, even taking into account the playtime, meaning it's not just like, oh, it's a better game, but this plays in an hour. We're like, no, when we play this, we kind of just want to play Terraforming Mars, so we're not going to play this, which was the conclusion at the time. I doubled down on that with a bit of a games leaving my collection video, where once again, I said I'm getting rid of Terraforming Mars. But then something else happened. I wasn't planning on it, but effectively we had one more person in my game group who their favorite game of all time is also Terraforming Mars. And before it left, after I filmed that video, but before it left, I sat there and decided to pull it out and play a game with him. But along the way, I thought of the things that took away from the Terraforming Mars experience for me in Ares Expedition. I thought of the things that made it so that I didn't want to play this game. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It's a good game, but not one I was in a rush to play. And I tried thinking through the core aspects that take away from the game experience to try to see if I could in any way improve upon those, for myself, to be very clear, improve upon for myself those specific aspects. And what I came up with is there's a few main reasons why I would rather play Terraforming Mars over Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. There's a lot of differences going on in the game, but there's going to be a few core aspects that differentiate the two. To begin with, the area control in Ares Expedition is incredibly lacking. It's not present. It's not lacking. It's not present. Versus Terraforming Mars has a degree of area control, a board that you're actually playing with. In Ares Expedition, you literally have these tiles that you're just flipping, and they serve no purpose in the order they are. It could be a random stack of tiles. The order and configuration is just a visual thing, because hey, we have a board, why not use it a little bit? It has no impact whatsoever. You're just flipping 9 ocean tiles. There's no degree of area control in the game. That's going to be the first core aspect. The second is going to be the lack of drafting. Now, to be very fair, drafting in Terraforming Mars is a variant, but it's a variant that I believe most people, not everyone, most people, myself included, consider it an essential aspect of the game, and Ares Expedition takes away that drafting. There is no phase where you simply draw cards. Rather, you draw cards when somebody plays the research card, and then those people draw cards, and the person playing the card gets an additional bonus because of the way you have the phases in this game. So again, 2 is going to be the lack of drafting. 3 is the tenseness of the card draw. In Terraforming Mars, you're going to draft your cards, or even just draw your cards. Let's say you're playing the non-drafting variant, or you're playing it solo, you draw 4 cards, and then you have to sit there and say, every card I want is going to cost me 3 money to keep. And so you kind of want all these things. These cards represent amazing opportunities, ways to build your engine, fun moments in the game, things that are essential. But they also cost you 3 money each, and so you often have a frequent challenge of, do I keep those cards so I can actually further build my engine? But if the more cards I keep, the less cards that I can actually build. Your eyes are always bigger than your stomach in this game, and it results in a tense, fun little puzzle of what do I do? Which cards are essential enough to give up the ability to play something else this turn because I want to pay the 3 money to keep that card? Ares Expedition does have the economy of card play, but it does so differently. In Ares Expedition, you draw your 4 cards, and then at any point you can sell a card for 3 money, which does still have a degree of trade-off, but that trade-off more comes with a degree of when you have better information around it. It doesn't come with the tenseness of having to decide on the spot before you know. Rather, keep everything. And if you need that 3 money, just go ahead and sell it later. it removes some of the trade-off that I otherwise love in Terraforming Mars, and so that's going to be number 3. And number 4 is going to be the general abstraction of some of the core mechanics. Your trees are reduced to point tokens. You don't have any real goals to go for in this game. There's no driving force. Terraforming Mars is going to give you 2 different sets of goals to drive your engine forward. Do I want to try to be the best at this, at this? If you're playing with various maps, you'll have even more variety on those goals, and this takes away from those experiences. Past that, it gives you most of the same aspects. There are other differences I can point out, other things, the way you play cards, the phases. I can point to other changes in the game, but those are going to be the 4 things that I primarily missed about Terraforming Mars. And so I sat there and said, okay, let me try to house rule this game. And this resulted in a bit of a step-by-step process where I tried introducing different elements to address the things that I felt were lacking in Terraforming Mars. And this video is going to be about me telling you which of those things worked for me, which ones didn't, and where Terraforming Mars ultimately ended up in my collection. To be very clear, this is a review and adjustment based on me changing the game to suit the things I wanted out of it. These may be things that are helpful or relevant to yourself. They may not be. This is the first time, I think, I'm doing a review that's like, hey, here's this game I like, because it's not the game that was put out. And it's a bit of a weird space to be in, but at the end of the day, I'm keeping Ares Expedition, so I thought it was worth going over those things. So number 1, the first thing I did, the first thing I did in the game with my friend, is I just basically house ruled the game that when you draw cards in Ares Expedition, you have to decide on the spot if you want to sell it for 3 money. Otherwise, you can sell it later for 1 money, no different than Terraforming Mars' standard game. So I go ahead and I play research, and I go ahead and I draw 5 cards, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I look at those cards and I sit there and I decide, you know what, I want to keep this one. This one's really good for me based on my engine, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to play it soon. I now have a choice. I can keep this card and sell it later for a money or play it, or I can sell it right now and only right now for 3 money. That was the first change that was introduced, and I can tell you that for myself and for, well, not myself, for all the people we played it with, we thought that change it added a degree of tension back into the game. It added a degree of trying to decide at the time, and it doesn't really impact or change the game otherwise. So that's going to be change number 1 that we introduced. The idea that you pay for you can only sell a card at its full value when you draw it, and at other times you have to basically sell it for 1 money instead. Change number 2 that unfortunately didn't really work for us, which is a little disappointing because I love drafting, but change number 2 was adjusting the research card. We changed the research card to basically be, instead of normally when you play research, all players get to draw 2 cards and they get to keep 1, and the player who played it draws 5 cards and keeps 2. We changed this so that you draw cards equal to the number of players plus 2. For example, in a 3-player game, the person playing this card is going to draw 5 cards. They're going to draft, pick 1, pass the rest to the opposing players, and come back around, and then they get a second pick. The other players get to pick 1. So it adds a little bit of an element of draft to the game, and the only major change where it differentiates from the balance of the game is going to be if multiple players play research, then we all have them do it, which would introduce a degree of multiple card draws on that turn. You'd have multiple players drawing 5 cards and then passing them around. I don't mind that change. I just don't think I cared enough about what it did to include it in future games. It does slow down the game a bit. It's one of these games where Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition is going to be giving you simultaneous play in all the other aspects of what it does, and this did introduce a degree of slowdown that normally I'm happy to trade off the slowdown for drafting. But because you didn't have all players drafting, because of the fact that it wasn't like everyone picks cards, it was rather, you pick your cards and then you just kind of draft around the table, it introduced a degree of slowdown to the game that I felt probably wasn't worth the little extra level of drafting you get a feel for it in the game. So I don't mind it. I wouldn't be averse to playing with it, but it didn't necessarily improve the experience. Regarding the area control, there's nothing I can really do about that without basically just playing Terraforming Mars instead. The area control and the removal of that aspect to the game, really is a big part of what makes Ares Expedition easier to table and a shorter playtime. So I didn't try to do anything with area control. I felt that any form of adjustment or change would be just way too drastic, past trying to come up with house rules about how you manipulate the ocean tiles and trying to make this actual configuration matter more, none of which I thought were necessarily inherently balanced or not. I didn't try to mess with the area control aspect. And honestly, area control, while I love what it does in Terraforming Mars, it is probably the aspect that I missed the least, especially when I'm trying to balance that Terraforming Mars experience versus the playtime I currently have. And the last thing, number 4, is what we did is we did introduce goals. I have a sheet over here just full of a whole bunch of various goals that we had. Goals that I just literally came up with on the spot. I have no clue if they're balanced or not. We've only played with them twice so far. They could be balanced. They're fun. They're fun to go with. And what we did with these goals is we have a variety of things. We pick 5 randomly every single game. You have 6 plant production, have 4 Jovian tags, build 5 trees, flip 4 ocean tiles, have 6 science tags. The standard stuff you'd expect in Terraforming Mars when you're looking at the goals. Just a variety of different objectives to go for. Have 12 earth tags. I don't even know, I'm just making them up at this point. But whatever's on that list. Have 0 cards in your hand. That was a fun one, a little bit of a challenge to go for. And then all those goals, what they do when you achieve them is they give you 2 TR, which is not a huge amount. It's enough to go for it. It's enough to try to achieve it. And that 2 TR is going to give you income. The earlier you get that goal, the better. But also going to give you points at the end of the game. And we liked what those did as well. That gave you some degree of something to strive for. And similar to the other rules in Ares Expedition, if 2 players achieve the goal in the same round, they both get that rating. They both get that TR bump. And that I really enjoyed, and like the card rule, where it's just an easy rule to go with, that's pretty easy to implement. Granted, unless and until I make it all pretty looking, it's basically just a bunch of little tiles with paper and text written on them. But they did add a bit more direction to the game, a bit more of a reason to pursue different strategies each time you play this game. So those are going to be the 4 aspects of Terraforming Mars, the 3 house rules we attempted and the 2 house rules that stuck. A quick summary of those is we added the element that you have to sell cards when you get them, if you want the full 3 money, otherwise you get 1 money. We tried drafting with the research card, and a little modification to how the research card worked. We found that it slowed down the game smoothness and the fact that all players are going simultaneously, and it didn't add enough value to the game past that. And then we added goals that we did enjoy because they gave us more of a direction, easy to implement, and they're random. We have 15 different goals. We pick 5 every round, 5 every game randomly, and those would give us a bit more direction in the game. That's the experiences we tried. Now, I will note, before I go into my final thoughts and where Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition has ended up for me, I will note I have a solo gameplay going up on the channel later today, and Cracklope has a 2-player gameplay going up on his channel. Not with the goals, unfortunately. We hadn't yet introduced the goals when we played those games, but adding some of the elements. So, to begin with, if you want to see Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition played solo or 2-player, you have that option on both his channel and my channel, and if you want to see it with the minor modification that these cards will have to be sold right away, then we have that rule in play. It's a bit of a, again, it's been going through a bit of a process the past few weeks, playing it every week with different rules or different adjustments, and those videos were filmed a few weeks ago. They're just going up now. So, where does Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition land now? So to begin with, like I said at the beginning of this video, I am keeping this game now. It has gone up for me. I think that the initial rating of a 3 out of 5, I think even after the first aspect of where you have to sell cards right away, I think it still was a 3 out of 5 for me. Slightly higher, but still a 3 out of 5. The introduction of the goals has pushed it to a 4 out of 5 for me. The introduction of both those mechanics giving me a variety of different ways to play or reasons to play different playstyles every single game, as well as having something else to pursue, to balance as you try to balance everything else you're going for in Terraforming Mars and Ares Expedition, as well as the fact that you have to sell the cards, adding a degree of tenseness. Those rules have both pushed it to a 4 to 5 for me in which the way I play it. And I will, by the way, in the description of this video, I'll throw a list of the 15 goals I put together. Keep in mind, they're not playtested heavily. They've had 2 games so far. They're not balanced inherently at all. They're just things I just came up with on the spot to try to get a feel for that aspect that it adds to the game. As far as overall my conclusions or thoughts on Ares Expedition, so like I said already, it's been bumped to a 4 to 5. I am keeping it in my collection. I think Ares Expedition is currently my preferred way to play Terraforming Mars solo. I like playing Terraforming Mars solo, and I think Terraforming Mars solo in the full game is going to give me a better experience. That trade-off of accessibility, setup, and time and everything else, I think I would prefer to play Ares Expedition solo for when I'm looking for that Terraforming Mars fix in 45 minutes to an hour, and I'm playing it solo instead. If I'm playing it 2-player, I think I prefer Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition as well. One of the problems with Terraforming Mars 2-player is that the area control doesn't feel as interesting in a 2-player experience. I really think 3 is the sweet spot for Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, for Terraforming Mars regular, when you're playing it with 3 players or more. And so playing a 2-player, I think I may prefer Ares Expedition. Playing Terraforming Mars 3-player, which is my preferred way to play the game. At 4 players it starts to get a little longer, 2 players lax a bit, and solo I could pick either one, but the playtime trade-off is probably worth it for me. 3-player Terraforming Mars is still going to be Terraforming Mars. There's still no real opportunity where I want to play Ares Expedition 3-player. At that point, I'd rather just play Ares Expedition. I'd rather play the original Terraforming Mars instead. And so that's ultimately where I end up with this game. It is one that I always liked it to a degree, but it always made me want more of the Terraforming Mars experience. Having added in some of that aspect of the Terraforming Mars experience, it does get a little closer to what the feeling I was looking for, and it does so with the trade-off of the time. So there's still a degree of lack. There's still major aspects of Terraforming Mars that I do not get that full feeling in this game. But also, this game does play shorter. It's easier to set up. It's easier to table. It's not easier to teach. It's easier to set up and table and all that. Overall, I'm looking forward to the expansions for this game. It's one that I don't know if I was too hasty. It's a weird thing. I haven't even figured out the title for this video yet. I don't know if do I title it Terraforming Mars, I was wrong, Terraforming Mars, an apology, a comeback tour. I have no idea what to actually title this video. I don't think I was wrong. My opinion was based on playing Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition the way it was designed. And the way it was designed, I think it's a really, really good game that still just makes me want to play Terraforming Mars instead. So I don't think I was wrong. Maybe I was hasty. I don't really know how to reconcile those two things when you house rule a game to make it stay. But overall, the changes I have made are ultimately there to make Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition more like Terraforming Mars, which is always what I wanted from this game. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Like I said already, later today on my channel, and at some point on Crackle's channel, perhaps even now, there are gameplays of this game. And until next time, have a good one.